Hello, welcome to Life and Surround. It's time for another 5.1 album review. Today I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite albums, which fortunately has met with one of my favorite engineers and has worked out quite well. So it's my pleasure to share with you Rush, A Farewell to Kings, 40th Anniversary Edition. And we're going to go a little bit through the box, and then we're going to talk a lot about the Blu-ray, which is the meat and potatoes for me. And let's get to it. So the box. Unfortunately, this is the only way to get the 5.1 mix legally. So you have this cover with kind of this velvety padding inside. So hooray for that. You get this turntable pad, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure exactly what that says in Latin. Ad regum veil. Maybe Michael Krogh can tell me.
So in the album A Farewell to Kings, it says Ad regum vale, which actually seems like really good Google Translate Latin, but it's garbled Latin, it's broken Latin. It means something like "to of the kings goodbye." So if you wanted to say something like "a farewell to the kings," it kind of depends on what you want to say. If you want to say something like "goodbye, kings," like "deuces, I'm out," it would be "waleta" or "ages." If you actually want to say something like a separation, like farewell to the kings, in the sense of like a separation from the kings, like this is something that we have left the kings, it would be something like discassus ab reges. All right, and that means something like a departure from the kings. This is a great example of when we have Latin that with people who have just enough knowledge to be dangerous. And as so easily happens with Latin, I rewatched what I just said. Then I said, if we wanted to say a separation from the kings, it would be discasus ab reges. It should have been discasus ab regibus. Discasus ab regibus, not ab reges. As you can tell, as someone who's been teaching Latin for 13 years and who's earning a graduate degree in the language, it can be difficult with the terminations of the endings. So.
You get this big old cardboard book thing with a bunch of LPs in it, and you get the same content replicated on CDs. So I'm an optical guy. I do have a turntable, but if I have CDs or a DVD or a Blu-ray, I'm not going to play these LPs. So maybe I'll sell them someday. I don't know. Anybody out there interested in the 40th anniversary LPs for Farewell to Kings? It has the album and a live concert from '77 at the Odeon, including some songs that were never released before. Different stages had the same concert, but missing a few Farewell to Kings songs. It comes with this replica tour book. So I'll just briefly leaf through this so you get an idea. This is actually pretty cool. Pictures and a condensed Rush primer. I think they were in the habit of listing their gear and stuff. Some promo type stuff. Here you see their back catalog. So they were trying to build their fan base and boost their sales a little bit. Can't blame them for that. And you get this Farewell to Kings 40th anniversary essay. And then the essay by Stephen Wilson is actually really good. You get some insight into how he did what he did. You get the art that also appears on the screen when you watch the Blu-ray. You get the lyrics. You get these drawings. I don't know what exactly to call these. Ink drawings or lithographs, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the artistic term is. But you get them. And you get this nifty smaller book that's the same as the bigger book, but it's CD size. And a lot of people out there are kind of fond of making a little bit of fun of this ring, but I like it. I'm going to go ahead and wear it. The King's ring. Alright, so I'm going to set all that aside. You also get, like I said, a bunch of audio on CD in this little digipack, which I managed to crease, so in case I ever resell this box, I'm going to have to take off $1 or $2 for that crease. And I didn't even mean to, it kind of creased under its own weight. Like I said, the Odeon show, you get closer to the heart, and at least one other song that was missing from different stages. But Geddy had a cold this night, so I wouldn't go picking up the 40th anniversary set just to get this complete show. There's other better sounding live Rush out there. Now, we get to the meat and potatoes for me. This here is the Blu-ray. It comes in its own cardboard sleeve, so I definitely appreciate that, so I can display it in my home or just kind of leave it out there easy to grab without having to dig through a box. And here's the, hopefully autofocus will work. Anyhow, let's get on to talking about the band and the Blu-ray. 1977, Rush. They had just come off the Make or Break album 2112, which was a success. They began to build a cult following. They got the record company off their backs. And 1977, Farewell to Kings, we see the band beginning to expand their sound, to branch out a bit with influences, with instrumentation, to take some risks. They are moving away from that Led Zeppelin clone kind of sound that they didn't entirely deserve that label for their first 4 albums, but there's a lot of Zeppelin sound and riffage, so I can understand that. Though they did have a lot of exploration on Fly By Night, on Caress of Steel, it didn't really serve them very well. Nylon string, passages, long suites. Here we see Rush not only bringing back the nylon string, but opening the album with it. They are definitely demonstrating that they are going to make an artistic, proggy album. Critics be damned, record company be damned, and A Farewell to Kings is what we get. We see all the members of the band expanding their sound. Geddy is beginning to showcase the Moog and the Oberheim. Alex is adding pedals, like bass foot pedals, at least live. Geddy and Alex live are moving to double neck guitars for some songs, so that Alex can play 12-string, and so that Geddy can play guitar with his hands and bass with his feet behind some of Alex's solos. And Neil has greatly expanded his drum kit to include bells, blocks, all kinds of percussion, additional toms. He not only has the traditional 4 toms of a rock kit, but he has concert toms, and Steven Wilson makes tremendous use of that on this record. That's one thing I appreciated about the essay that he wrote, that he discussed what a challenge it can be to make a 3-piece sound interesting in surround, But Rush really helped him out by not only Peart playing on dozens of different pieces as a part of his kit, but Geddy working vocals, bass, and keyboards, and Alex covering a variety of different kinds of guitars on this record and layering a lot of them. So let's talk about the mix. I'm going to give kind of a very broad-brushed overview of how each member of the band is mixed, and then we'll do a quick song by song. So here we have Alex, and I'm showing you his parts as best I can, and this is broad brushing, it's not the same for every song, but as placed, so where his parts are coming out of the speakers. You tend to have his two main guitar parts, often double tracked, panned front left and front right respectively. You tend to have the most notable overdubs, guitar overdubs, which I've labeled down there GOD1 and GOD2, guitar overdub 1 and 2. They're usually panned back to the surrounds. And you usually have his solos showcased in the center channel, isolated to the center channel with maybe some panning out to the surrounds or reverb from it out in the surrounds, just so it's not stuck in that center channel, but it definitely is featured there, though it may be reinforced in other channels. Here's a big exception for his solos, Cinderella Man. This could be a reason to pick up this Blu-ray in and of itself. This solo is panned super crazy, mostly between the front left and right, but it does come out into the room for a lick here or there. So I've tried to demonstrate that here just to give a sense of the craziness. Alright, let's move on to Geddy. Again, this is as placed. This is where his sounds are coming out of the channels generally. You tend to have his vocal isolated in the center, but I've put in parentheses down in the surrounds that you do have some reinforcement of his vocal in the surrounds, both dry and ambient. You tend to have his Moog showcased in the center, though there are exceptions. There are songs where the Moog is hard panned over to the left surround, so I've put that in parentheses. His bass is almost always in the front left and right, though there's one very notable exception. And his Oberheim, I didn't really hear it anywhere other than hard pan down to that left surround. And here is a demonstration of what it sounds like. For Alex, where he is panned to, that's pretty much what it sounds like. For Geddy, I think the effect that Steven Wilson was going for was that the bass would sound up front, dead center. The Moog and the vocal would be center, but out a little bit more in the room, you know, very present. And then at times the Moog and the Oberheim are hard panned down to that left surround. And they sound like it. Cygnus X1, that ominous, monstrous bass line that comes in after the spacey sound effect, weird vocal introduction, that dong dong da dong 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 da dong, starts in the rear of the room, dead center, that phantom center rear, and it fades up to the front of the room. By the time the band comes in and joins him, the bass is front and center at full power, but it's one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. My first time hearing Steven Wilson's Cygnus mix come on and wondering if the bass was going to hang in the back of the room the whole time, and then realizing that it was crawling to the front. I'd never heard anybody do that before, and it's a very, very cool effect for this track. It is an example of Steven Wilson taking, in my opinion, all the right risks on this mix to make a three-piece very, very, very interesting for the entire album. And finally we get what I think is just the most astounding very cool, high payoff part of this mix. It's the professor on the drum kit. It's Mr. Neil Peart. We get kick, snare, hi-hat, front and center like normal, though the hi-hat does have a lot of reverberation in the rear surround, so at times when the mix is sparser, it may actually sound like the hi-hat is in the right surround, but the dry source is up front and center. You have all kinds of percussion in your surrounds, from chimes to bells to a rattle slap, that kind of rattlesnake thingy that happens toward the end of Closer to the Heart. I did a terrible job pantomiming that for you. You know what? I'll go find like an MP3 of it and I'll insert it. So anyhow, temple blocks, bells that sometimes shift back and forth, sometimes begin in one surround and echo through to the other, like in Xanadu. You get cymbals, crashes, china, splash, and ride, wrapped all around the room. And then I think the coolest feature of this drum mix are the toms. I've tried to demonstrate here how the toms start from the smallest, highest pitch on your rear right and wrap around the room to the biggest, lowest pitch tom in the left rear. And so it just makes this big arc around the room in a similar pattern to the cymbals. And it's just the coolest thing ever. Neil Peart is the professor on the drum kit. He's sitting behind an enormous kit. Steven Wilson says in his essay that he took inspiration from Neil Peart being surrounded by his drum kit, so he thought it would be cool if the listener were surrounded by his drum kit. And he was absolutely right. He hit pay dirt. This is the coolest Rush experience I've ever had. I wish that every Rush album could be mixed like this. So let's go through track by track just to list a few notable moments in these mixes, okay? The thing to note about Farewell to Kings, I think, is that Wilson starts out the album with Rush as a trio in a triangle formation. Alex is up front, Geddy is in the surround left, and Neil is in the surround right. So you have the three members of the band surrounding you. It's super cool. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that the nylon guitar part up in front starts favoring the left, shifts over to favoring the right, and then ends the song favoring the left again. I find that just to be cool. I don't find it to be distracting, and sometimes I haven't even noticed it. I did happen to notice it when I gave a deep listen today. Xanadu, I would have to say the highlight are the panned bells and temple blocks. During those interludes, do 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 do, and during some of the riffy sections where Neil is going kind of crazy on the temple blocks while Alex is doing some kind of like fast strumming on his 12-string. Steven Wilson doesn't just lock those temple blocks down to a channel. He spins them all around the back of the room. And then, like I said, the bells sometimes have this kind of echo effect that starts in one channel and moves over to another. So I really like that about Xanadu. Closer to the Heart, I love the slap rattle. I just think it's the coolest sound ever. I wish that Neil hadn't abandoned it and only used it on one song ever. I'm not aware of him ever using it again, but Steven Wilson has that hard panned to the surround right, and I think that is to good effect. Cinderella Man, as we've already discussed, the wildly panned solo section. That solo is already panned crazy in stereo, so if you're a fan of that, the surround version is going to blow your mind. I mean, Steven Wilson totally nails it. Madrigal, on this one, I like how Steven Wilson gave the song a lot of room to breathe. Everything seems spread out where it needs to be. Lots of lush acoustics and those chimey electric guitars. And Neil Peart has an extremely sparse drum part, and Steven Wilson takes the opportunity to allow the reverberation from the snare to start at the front of the room and move to the back and really just fill out the sound of the room and give this song just this vast spaciousness. The image on screen is this pasture with a kind of a berg that's being visited by a dragon, and you definitely get a sense of that vast spaciousness in Wilson's mix. And then for Cygnus, I would say the highlight, again, we've already discussed, is that bass crawl from the back of the room to the front. So that's Cygnus X1. This Blu-ray also features the entirety of Cygnus X2 in 4.0 quad. Cygnus X2 are all of the sound effects from the Cygnus X1 recording sessions. They didn't know how much of it would be used on the album, so they made a bunch of sound effects, and Steven Wilson took them, made them into a big loop, fades things in and fades things out. You know, I gotta give him kudos for finding a master tape with a bunch of sound effects on it and not just figuring it to be cutting room floor type stuff, but, you know, because he's worked with Tangerine Dream and Hawkwind and bands like that, I think he just saw a golden opportunity to create a super cool track. So it actually plays behind the main menu of the Blu-ray. So let the main menu play for around 5 minutes and you'll get the entirety of Cygnus X2 in surround. One of the coolest things, I think, about this Blu-ray. Steven Wilson's not a fan of allowing his surround mixes to be mastered, at least not compressed. So what we see here is an extremely dynamic recording. Even the loudest front channels have all their natural peaks, and there's plenty of breathing room in every single channel. I think he has relented in later years to allowing a mastering engineer to at least make sure that everything's okay, to double check the LFE level and stuff like that. But we see a very untampered with, pure mix here. Very dynamic. This mix sounds wonderful. The band sounds heavy when it needs to, airy and light when it needs to. There's no harshness to my ears. I can crank this unbelievably loud and it's still enjoyable. It's got wonderful crisp highs and defined lows, and I think it's balanced. There's no overbearing mids. This really does it for me. So sonically, this just gets full marks for me. In case it wasn't clear, the mix gets full marks. So let's move on. Alright, so the value. This is a very cool box. It does come with a lot of really great bells and whistles. It can help you relive the 77 tour. I kind of dig the ring. They did replicate music across optical and analog for, you know, a variety of different fans. And the booklets, the art, it's generally well done, especially the on-screen art for the Blu-ray is superb. It really adds to the songs. So watching the Blu-ray is a very pleasurable experience. I don't like that they locked the Blu-ray in the Super Deluxe Edition, the mega expensive box. They gave options for buying just the CDs or just the LPs. But in order to get the Blu-ray, you have to buy the whole kit and caboodle. And I know die-hard Rush fans and die-hard surround fans out there who don't have this box because of how expensive it is. And so I think that does detract from the value a little bit. The music is great. It's not Rush's best in my opinion. It's almost there, but it's not Permanent Waves. So, you know, I would take off a couple of marks for that, and then just being locked in the box. So, overall value, I would say mix is a 10 out of 10. Sonics, 10 out of 10. the music is around an 8 out of 10 for Rush, which is a 10 out of 10 for most other bands. And then the value, I would say, maybe is a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, just because it's so damned expensive. So overall, let's see how I have rated this album. We go to the Rush index here on Quadraphonic Quad, and then to the 2017 Farewell to Kings version. And we see that I have rated it a 9. And I'm going to stick with that. I think that's fair in terms of purely just the mix and the sonics. And a favorite band, classic era, meeting a favorite engineer, and that engineer just knocking this all the way out of the park. That would make this a 10. I am just bringing it down just a little bit to make room for the music of Permanent Waves just being my favorite absolute Rush, and because they locked it in a mega expensive box. Now that said, I do hope that a wonderful mixing engineer gets a hold of Permanent Waves someday, and Caress of Steel. I wouldn't complain about that either. Some people have asked if I was going to compare Wilson's A Farewell to Kings with Chaiki's 5.1 mix, and if I get enough requests to do that, I will eventually. I just didn't want to in this video. I wanted this video just to be a celebration of Steven Wilson's A Farewell to Kings from the 40th anniversary set. It's just wonderful. It is probably my favorite surround experience of my entire time of obsessing on this hobby. I recommend it if you can afford it, and I hope that someday they will find it in the goodness of their hearts to release it as a standalone, or that maybe you can look on Amazon at warehouse deals, and occasionally you'll get a really great bargain, like maybe 40% off or 50% off if the box is all banged up. Maybe you can buy the box and resell the vinyl, resell the CDs, or just sell everything except the Blu-ray, maybe. In any case, I want to hear what you think about this box set, about Steven Wilson's mix of A Farewell to Kings by Rush. And did you like this review? Did you hate this review? Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe, ring the notification bell, share the video, tell your friends, leave me comments, just discussing the album, or calling me names, ideas for how to improve the channel, encouragement, whatever you feel like. It has been my pleasure to share A Farewell to Kings, the 40th anniversary remix by Steven Wilson with you. This mix brings me endless joy, and I hope that it has done for you, or that it will in the future. And in any case, I look forward to hearing about it. And until next time, live life in surround.